Welcome back. Now, the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence is an annual global campaign running from November 25 until December 10th. We have Simone Fourie, who is a psychological counselor with Geluk Psychology, in studio with us this evening to talk to us about the scourge and impact of GBV in the Namibian context. Simone, good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I want to start with talking about the 16 Days of Activism and how, the 16 Days of Activism campaign influences public perception and creates awareness around GBV.
It does create awareness, right? It reaches such a broad audience because it's on social media, it's on television, it's on radio, it's in the newspapers, so it reaches every Namibian. And not only that, but it also educates the public on gender-based violence and the different types of violence that can occur, because it's not just physical or sexual.
Yes.
So yeah, it does great work in reducing stigmatization against it and just encouraging people to speak up and becoming aware of it.
Yeah. What are some of the common misconceptions around gender-based violence that you've encountered, in your practice and in your work?
There are so many. I think one of the biggest ones is that it can only occur with women. That's not true at all. Gender-based violence can happen with men too. It can happen with children. It can happen with non-binary people. So although women are the majority in our statistics, men are very much also abused. So the thing is, what makes it difficult for men is that the very place where we have to report gender-based violence is called women and child abuse. So definitely that creates the stigma that it doesn't happen to men and it's only men who are the perpetrators. That is a misconception. I think another misconception is probably that you somehow provoked a person that caused the gender-based violence, the victim blaming that happens. There must have been a reason for it, but there's never a reason that could justify violence, and that's a big misconception that people have, and it really creates a lot of shame about it. Those are probably two of the biggest misconceptions, that somehow I am to blame if I went through gender-based violence.
Simone, how do cultural factors in Namibia contribute to the prevalence of GBV?
There is this cultural belief in a lot of Namibian cultures that men should be the dominant partner and women should be the subordinate. Submissive or the subordinates, which kind of it enforces this belief or this idea that men should control their women through power, authority, or discipline them through violence. And a lot of cultures believe that that is okay and that is normal. So that can definitely contribute to gender-based violence. Of course, also some cultural beliefs are that gender-based violence is a private matter, it's a family matter, If I see it, I don't say anything because that would mean that I am sticking my nose into someone else's business, which means that it doesn't get reported. And I think this can worsen gender-based violence, and it can keep it hidden, and it keeps people from seeking help, and it keeps the violence hidden.
Does Geluk Psychology have any specific programs or initiatives aimed at addressing GBV?
We do work with the Be Free Foundation, and we often receive referrals from them for gender-based violence cases. So through that, we strengthen our commitment to the fight against gender-based violence, and we have donated to women's shelters specifically for survivors of gender-based violence in the past as well. But usually around 16 Days of Activism, when the campaign starts, keep an eye out on our social media. We always post about it because that's our most accessible platform that we use to create awareness on it, and we always have a campaign running on there when it's the 16 Days of Activism.
16 Days of Activism campaign is great, but how can communities better support victims of GBV after the 16 Days of Activism?
I agree. It shouldn't just be 16 days. It actually should be throughout the whole year, that we should support people who are facing gender-based violence and who are suffering with gender-based violence. I think we should be active bystanders in the community. If you do see something, report it, or if you do know of something, talk to that person, ask them if they need help. You could be the key to unlocking that person and getting them the help that they need and getting out of a very bad situation. And I think don't stop talking about it, never stop talking about it, because the more we expose it, the more we fight against it. And I think just throughout the year, not just these 16 days, we should always focus on raising awareness on it, and we should just keep on strengthening our laws to protect against gender-based violence.
Just very quickly and briefly, because we're out of time, you mentioned earlier, of course, that sometimes people are afraid to get involved because it's not their business, it's a private matter. So for somebody that does witness something like this and feels unsure, how do they go about intervening?
I mean, if you are witnessing a dangerous situation directly, I wouldn't say to intervene, because that could be dangerous for you and for the person who is undergoing the violence. But if you can somehow discreetly document it or anonymously report it, then do that. Even if it is anonymous, report it. Avoid physical intervention, and if you can discreetly and subtly approach the survivor, ask the person if they are okay, if they do need any help, and if they are open to receiving help, provide them with the resources, where they can report it, where they can go, is there any counselling services that they can call, any shelters that they can go to, who do they report it to at the police. So yeah, no physical intervention because that could be dangerous for the victim and for you, but you can do it discreetly.
Thank you so much, Simone, and thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
On that